Letitia James facing now up to 30 years if you can imagine, thanks to, well, a whole variety of things, but primarily the allegation that she may have lied on that mortgage application in Norfolk, Virginia. As I said, the Wall Street Journal finally getting around to covering this one. I mean, it took them long enough. Wall Street Journal writing, Donald Trump and Letitia James raise the stakes in bitter feud, and then they go on to quote Al Sharpton. I don't know what's happened to the Wall Street Journal lately. It's like every single headline you read is so insanely negative. Anyway, they quote Al Sharpton saying, these are two very, very big personalities with two very different views of the world, et cetera, and they're going to continue moving forward because it's, in his view, beneficial for both of them. I'm not so sure it's that beneficial for one Letitia James. She's got 22 lawsuits and counting, and she's running on this, you see, once again, politicking on Donald Trump. If you read the article, it goes on to talk about her Norfolk, Virginia home as her primary residence and the 2001 certificate for her Brooklyn property that lists a different number of units than other filings. And you see the problem with that is that she may have falsified these documents. According to media reports, the Wall Street Journal writes, she, quote, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loans. Wow, this is not good, Tishy baby, not good at all. Here's her response.
I will respond to these baseless allegations at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way, but I am 100% confident that it will not result in any criminal indictment or action against me, and that it is nothing more than a revenge tour, and that Donald Trump just ultimately got to the J's, and I was next.
The key allegation, again, it sounds like you don't want to address them here, but I'm just going to put it out so people understand that a property that was owned in Virginia, a mortgage that you signed, if I'm not mistaken, for that property, that they say you falsely represented yourself as a resident of Virginia, and that was essentially amounts to mortgage fraud since you're a resident of New York. What is your response to that?
It's baseless. Everybody knows I'm a resident of New York, specifically Brooklyn. And again, we will respond at the appropriate time in the appropriate way to these baseless allegations. And some media outlets like the Daily News over the weekend has indicated as much.
That's all you want to say?
That's all that I'm going to say.
Yeah. Well, she has responded, you see, via her very expensive attorney named Abby Lowell, who actually also worked for Hunter Biden. Big questions about whether or not New York taxpayers are going to have to foot those bills. We're going to get to that in just a second. But again, the Wall Street Journal is catching up with her. Now they're covering it because you see, these are pretty darn serious allegations. And just to go through them, she says, oh, nothing's going to come of it. Hey, honey, you know what? The grand jury investigation has begun. The grand jury subpoenas have just gone out. And Kash Patel confirming over the weekend, the FBI has launched a full-fledged investigation because you see, you can't do that. Letitia, you can't actually try and use federal dollars and taxpayer money to get yourself a lower mortgage rate. I mean, funny, right? Given what she was accusing Donald Trump of doing. Here's the documentation. Take a look. Read it and weep, okay? Look at what they circled. I hereby declare that I intend to occupy the property as my, quote, principal residence in Norfolk, Virginia, all while this lady is living in New York because she's the Attorney General in New York. This is the house, so you're looking at it on the screen. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to my Spotify audio podcast, please do that. Go over to Spotify. It's all free. And give me 5 stars if you would. Important stuff. And a review. Hey, why not, right? You can get it there, again, on Spotify. But this is the house in Norfolk, Virginia, that she signed on saying that she was going to live there full time. Oh, it's just a technicality. Just like, oh, the brownstone was a technicality in New York, just a technicality. You see, she qualified for federal loans if she said she had 4 units instead of 5. So even though it had 5, she went with 4. This woman has a history of lying, go all the way back to the 80s when, guess what? Take a look at this documentation. She signed on as her dad's wife, for goodness sakes, her dad's wife, back in 1983 or whenever it was, in order to get him a loan. So now Letitia baby's looking at 30 years in prison. Okay, 30 years in prison, and this is moving forward. The train has left the station. She violated Code 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan, 18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements to the U.S. government, all carrying with it up to 30 years in prison, because you know what? You can't lie to the federal government when you're applying for a federal government loan. FHA loans. I mean, this is serious stuff insured by the federal government. So if you lie on something like that, it actually really does have ramifications for all taxpayers. She was trying to use this logic, which is so amazing to me. She was trying to use this logic when she went after Donald Trump. The only problem with all that was, he did not have a federal loan. He had a private transaction, and his private banker, in that case Deutsche Bank, was responsible for doing the due diligence to make sure that he had signed all his documentation correctly, because you see, there were no federal dollars at stake, unlike in Letitia James' particular situation, which is why the judge said, you know what, I don't get it. This is a private transaction. What are you sitting here talking about? Look at Judith Vale. She's the woman that they had arguing the case. Poor Judith Vale. She has to argue Letitia's case. You see, when it goes up to the appellate court, they try to get smarter lawyers, less political lawyers. And this poor woman sitting there, they shut her down right out of the gate. I mean, literally, like she said, hello, I'm Judith Vale. I'd like to please the court. And boom, they shut her down immediately. You've seen that soundbite. But here's an interesting one where the judge says, hey, this is a private transaction, a commercial dispute. Why are you bringing this case to court?
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But it wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing.
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market, that hurts the market and honest participants in the market. And the legislature also decided, contrary to what defendants think, that making sure that business in New York stays honest is the way to attract and keep business
to that
in New
point,
York.
the executive law.
Okay, here's the point, lady. Or shall I say, Letitia. Letitia, you can't lie on a federal loan application. You can't say this is your primary residence when you're actually the Attorney General of New York. This is 2023. Okay, so she was already involved in litigation with Donald Trump. Those in glass houses should not throw stones, for goodness sake. She's going after him for mortgage fraud. And the beauty of the whole thing, or the irony of it all, is that she's the one who's guilty of it. Think about that. I mean, this is like Shakespearean. This is operatic. Really. I used to be an opera singer. I know all the stories. This is like, and you know what? The fat lady always dies. She gets the big aria at the end. When the fat lady sings, it's over. In this case, when the fat lady sings, it's really going to be over. With Tishy Baby, here we go. She's out of money. They're not going to get funds for her to fight this on a legal basis because the Republicans in New York are flipping out. Quote, this proposed use of public money, for her to defend herself with her high-priced attorney is a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars. It undermines public trust in government and sends a troubling message that elected officials and state employees are entitled to publicly benefited, publicly funded legal defenses, even for matters entirely disconnected from their public responsibilities. In other words, you buying your house, Tishy Baby, in Virginia, that's your business. And if you screw it up like you did, allegedly, then guess what? Again, that's your business. New York taxpayers should not be on the hook for your legal tax bills. They have some $10 million that they've set aside for her to cover this. I don't think it's happening. I don't think she's going to get to first base, which means Letitia is going to be out of money, which means Letitia's not going to be able to afford her high-priced attorney, which means, gosh, Letitia might just actually have to sell some assets. Here's the attorney writing on her behalf to none other than Pam Bondi, trying to say that this is a technicality. Well, how many technicalities do you have? There's a lot of technicalities. I mean, I've applied for mortgages before. Do you think I have these kind of technicalities? No, none, zero, zip, nada. You know what? Because I actually tell the truth. Imagine that. I've never had that. I mean, look at these things one after another, whether it was the Norfolk house where she's saying, oh, yeah, this is going to be my primary residence. Just look at the documentation. Whether it's the brownstone, oh, there's 4 units instead of 5 because, you see, I get a better rate and I qualify for federal dollars. I'm going to work the system, aren't I? Oh, and then daddy's suddenly my husband because we'll get a better rate on the mortgage. I mean, I'm seeing a pattern. Are you? Are you? And the beauty of it, ladies and gentlemen, is remember when she said, oh, Donald Trump, if he doesn't have the money, he's just going to have to sell off some of his assets. Tissue Baby's not going to have the money to pay for her high-price attorney, which means 30 years in the slammer, or maybe she's just going to have to do what she said Donald Trump is going to have to do.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Dun, dun, dun. Fate has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? So she's not going to have the funds, one, to pay for the lawyer, and she's not going to have the funds to pay for her fines. And in this case, it's more than just fines. In this case, it is a 30-year penalty in the slammer, in federal prison. I think she's going to look good in orange, right? What do you guys think? I think that's what's happening to Letitia James, I'll tell you. Her whole argument is, oh, this is just political, it's political, it's political. And we know it's political because the president says things like this. I'll go back to this soundbite, but I want you to remember something. He was very careful, was he not? He said it's going to be up to Pam and the DOJ. And indeed it is up to Pam and the DOJ. And this is why the grand jury investigation is going on right now with the subpoenas being mailed.
I can say unrelated to that, she's a disaster for New York. She's a horrible, horrible human being. And I think she's a total crook. There's no question about it. But that's just my opinion. Pam's going to have to do what she wants. She's a very bad person. She's a very, very bad person who campaigned solely on, I'm going to get Donald Trump over and over again. She's a sick person. But that has nothing to do with what Pam does. Pam is going to do what's right. She always does. I've known her a long time.
She is a pretty bad person. All right? I think that's actually a pretty fair statement. And now that bad person is having to face the music. She's out there saying, oh, I never campaigned. I never campaigned on any of this. You know darn well she campaigned totally on it. And she's still campaigning on it because she's up for office again next year.
The President of the United States has complained that I'm engaging in some sort of political witch hunt, that I've got some personal vendetta against him, that I campaigned against him. That is not true.
This illegitimate president who sits in the White House. That president, because he's not my president, he's an illegitimate president. His days are numbered.
I do think that she thinks we're all morons. To sit there with a straight face and say, oh, I didn't campaign. I didn't use this in my campaign against him. When, we have this little thing called the internet and there's this little thing called tape, Tissue Baby. We got it. And you are going to face the music. Up to 30 years in prison for lying on your federal housing application loan. You are going down, honey pie down. Yeah. Like I said, operatic. Operatic. Quick shout out from my company. 76 Research, 76 portfolios. We're looking at the market today. It's off a little bit. I think this is a good opportunity. We'll see what happens with that big, beautiful bill, right? That's all coming down the pipeline. But go take a look. 76 portfolios.com. I'm telling you, the income builder is a great one, especially for those of you that want to make sure that you're going to be able to retire someday, right? That would be nice to be able to retire one day. And this is a dividend stock portfolio that can hopefully help you do that. The other shout I want to give, and we're totally independent here on the show, is to our friends over at American Hartford Gold. Gold has been on a tear, so hopefully you've been listening to me. I've been talking about gold forever, long before we even had a gold sponsor. I've always liked gold. Trish loves gold. That's what you need to remember.com. You get up to $15,000 in free silver with qualifying offers. You can call them and use my name at 1-844-495-1115 or text Trish to 65532. Gold is one of those things that, you know what, kind of help you in those Armageddon type scenarios, but also help you, for example, when they're depreciating the US dollar, which they have been doing, and you can anticipate they're going to do it some more, right? Donald Trump loves low interest rates, but what are low interest rates? A depreciation of the US dollar. So protect yourself with something like gold. Gold is one of those great, great ways to do it.